Hi guys, so you're getting a bonus video today. I made mention of masks and sensory issues in that previous video and how that's a big fear I have right now, that I'll have a meltdown in public over my mask. So I wanted to expand more since masks are everywhere. This seems like a great time to discuss sensory issues. I was spurred to do this video because of a conversation I had someone on Facebook, and I was talking about how I dislike masks very strongly. And she was telling me she has a daughter with ASD who wouldn't keep her mask on in a store, and some man came up and started giving her a hard time. So she explained, my daughter has autism and sensory issues and etc. And apparently the man laughed and said there was no such thing and walked away. So obviously you're not going to have a 10-minute conversation about sensory issues in a grocery store. So having videos like this that someone like that could be pointed to is maybe the next best thing. I like to think with some education his attitude would have changed. Maybe I'm being optimistic. I can't wrap my head around that attitude, although people making up their own facts is becoming a thing now. And I can understand that most people, because autism is maybe 1.5%, 2% of the population, so that means 98-ish% of people don't have it, and many don't know anyone with it. I've never worked with anyone with it, etc. So I can understand people not being that up on what this is. So, since it's such a hot topic right now with masks, I figured I'd give you guys this bonus video. So, sensory issues, in a nutshell, it's neurological. My brain is not properly processing the input from my nerves, to put it in one sentence. And it should go without saying that it's not something I can control. I can't control what my brain and my nerves do. So telling someone to put up with it or get over it is pointless, because we can't. That's not how this works. So some of my senses are turned up to 11. So I would say smell, hearing, taste. I'm very picky about textures of clothes and food. Those senses are turned up to 11. My brain is very bad. I notice smells and sounds other people don't, because my brain doesn't filter. Every little thing that comes in is processed to death. And nothing that's inconsequential gets filtered. And sensory issues can also actually involve undersensitivity. So in my case, there's more than 5 senses, by the way, from a scientific standpoint. Touch even is a bunch of different senses. Cold, heat, textures, pressure. Your skin has sensors for movement. And each one of those senses individually could be up or down in the same person. They could be very sensitive to temperature and have very uncoordinated movements because they're not detecting that properly. So with me, what I have that's undersensitive, I would say 2 things: proprioception and vestibular. Vestibular system is in your inner ear, tells you which direction you're facing, and mine is definitely undersensitive. I have horrible balance. And I do what's called sensation seeking, such as spinning, swinging, because I'm trying to replace the information that I'm missing. I'm trying to do that externally. And proprioception is knowing where your body is in space. And I tend to be clumsy and uncoordinated, not great with my motor skills, slow to learn tasks that involve motor planning, because I'm not getting enough feedback about where my body is in space. So how do sensory issues, now that I've given you an introduction, and remember that looks different in every person with ASD as well. So how sensory issues relate to masks, again, is unique to every person. For me, I don't like the hot air against my face. Warmth overall is a sensory issue for me. I would rather stand at the bus stop in minus 30 Celsius than plus 30. I do not like being hot. And speaking of winter, I don't even cover my face most of the time in the winter. It has to be very windy, very cold, or I have to be out for a long time. Before masks, though, it wasn't that big of an issue. Toronto has milder winters than most of Canada, so I've never, for the most part, I haven't had to cover my face that often. So before masks, it wasn't that big of an issue. My only real issue in the winter would be walking into a store or a building where I'm all bundled up, and I immediately will start taking off all my layers. I cannot tolerate having my hat and scarf and gloves and what else. As soon as I walk inside, it comes off. I can't tolerate it. Um, so with these masks holding the hot air against my face, it's pretty unbearable. For another person, they might dislike the loops over their ears. They might dislike the texture of the fabric. I dislike a lot of fabrics. My mask is just a hunk of bedsheet cotton, actually. It's an old bedsheet, the corner of an old bedsheet, and it's sewed at the back, so it kind of looks like I'm wearing a bandana around my face. I went with that because it's less hot, because it's open at the bottom. I have it pretty long, so it would still be hard for particles to get in and out, but it's at the same time more air than the standard shape masks you see. Um, and even then, I can't always wear it very long. The longest I've worn it was about an hour in a doctor's waiting room. And here's another thing about sensory issues. They accumulate. In this doctor's waiting room, it was only a few people. There was a radio playing and a receptionist answering the phone, and that was it for noise. The lights weren't harsh, no weird smells, and no activity. I was just sitting. And for some people, even just that bit of noise combining with the mask might be too much. For me, I was okay. Eventually, it would have been too much, but for me, I was able to wear that mask for quite a while. However, in Walmart, I lost about a quarter of that time because Walmart is busy. The lights are harsh. Lots of people, lots of smells, visuals, lots of visual clutter. Um, my Walmart doesn't seem to be very well air conditioned. Plus, now that I have this fatigue issue, I have a lot less stamina, and it takes stamina to tolerate your sensory issues. So when I'm exhausted and have, this much stamina to begin with, I wear out in the store very quickly. And lately I've been either sending my mom in the debit card and the list, or I've been ordering from online. Um, I have I have never taken my mask off. I've always had it on. When I'm in places where everyone else has one on, because I'm afraid of what people will say to me. So far I've been able to tolerate it enough that I haven't had any issues. But I do worry. I do worry I'll have it off and someone will say something. Um, and I'll wrap this up with just a couple other techniques I use for my sensory issues. The gold standard would be occupational therapy, which doesn't fix it, but it teaches the person techniques to mitigate it. I feel like if I'd been born maybe 10 years later, I probably would have got OT because I have fairly significant sensory issues, particularly with eating. But because of when I was born and Asperger's not being well understood and so forth, I missed out on that. And I can't afford, as an adult, I can't afford to just pay for therapy out of pocket or I would. And what's covered by the government is very limited. So what I've had to do is just learn other little techniques. So I'm going to share a few of those. I talked about how I modified my mask. You'll notice I'm constantly pushing my glasses up in these videos. I can't tolerate them tightened. I've had them tightened so they don't fall, and I find it too uncomfortable. I'd rather just shove them up all day. My hair, um, I go to the hairdresser maybe once every 3 years. I hate having my hair cut. I can't even brush it unless it's wet. I hate brushing it dry. However, I do get fed up after a while with the long hair and the knots and the huge amounts of conditioner I go through. So eventually I'll get fed up, I'll tolerate one haircut, get a whole bunch cut off, and then it'll be like 2 or 3 years before I do it again. And the way I dress. I cannot tolerate certain fabrics, so I don't clothes shop online, mostly. I did buy some leggings online. I had some identical pairs already at home, so I just made sure they were the exact same product. For the most part, no. I have to feel something. I have to see how it feels. And I hate static electricity, so in the winter, you'll never see me in like a wool sweater. Not happening. My hair will be staticky and I'll be miserable. Um, and oh, this is a here. I'll end on this sort of funnier one. The texture of the seats on the buses and subways. They used to be plastic when I was a kid, and they've changed to this horrible cloth. And now I've taken to buying shorts that are long enough to cover my thighs so I don't feel the seat when I sit down in the summer. I used to carry a pillowcase, and because before I clued in I could buy longer shorts, I used to carry a pillowcase, and I would put that down and sit on it. And I look back now and wonder what the heck people were thinking. But it worked at the time, such is life with sensory issues. So I hope you learned something, and thanks for watching.